Millions of South Africa's most vulnerable citizens are facing uncertainty over their social grant payments. The transition from SASSA Gold Cards to the new Postbank Black Cards has been fraught with challenges, leaving many elderly and disabled beneficiaries scrambling to meet the cutoff. Activists estimate that over 1.4 million people have yet to make the switch, raising fears of widespread disruptions to critical social grants. Veronica Makhoali joins us live. Veronica, we've heard about the challenges associated with the switch over to the cards. What we haven't heard is why the switch is being done in the first place.
Certainly, Hugo. In fact, as we've been just monitoring the activation here by SASSA and Postbank, an opportunity to allow residents specifically here in Sebokeng Zone 14 to have the opportunity to migrate onto that new system. A lot of the grant recipients that we've spoken to have also said that perhaps the lack of urgency in terms of people flooding to this community hall is that some residents are not sure why this switchover is necessary. Now, SASSA says that they are moving on to these new black cards, and this is because they are trying to create a safer system in terms of how recipients access their money. They say that they are trying to create a safer way in terms of accessing money, but also a system that will safeguard their funds. This includes in this new black card system biometric authorization, and this is of course very important. As you can imagine, Hugo, that just this week we saw those several employees from SASSA who were arrested for running a card fraud scheme. And this has been an internal system, a challenge really for SASSA in regards to the fraudulent activity that happens in regards to these payments. And so they're trying to create a safer and secure system in regards to that, to make sure that people are actually accessing their funds and there's none of that fraudulent activity. But we know as well, Hugo, that there have been reports of long queues at some of these points where these migration for these cards are taking place. But here it's been a very different story in regards to that, a very slow intake of some people that have come in. But residents, of course, are saying that they are grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this card system and to change if it means, of course, being able to access their money safer. We spoke to a few of those residents and this is what they had to say.
Ke bone di line tse ngata hampe le TV mona ke sheba ditaba ke bona batho ba sokola hohle mona le mane Pick n Pay ena e ka moka thabong ka bona ke bone batho ba isale ho tloa kgwedi ena e tla tjena batho ba ntse di line tse telele tse tshosang ebile mo bona ntse ke botsa bana ke bona TV ba re hai ntate ya bo boitumelo mane ba thusa boxa mara ka jeko itsa ona la usio mongwa speaker a bua thabo mane re tle community ka nnete ka community ba mpatile fela pasa ka matha ka hai ka lola ta pasa ba nthusitse ka panya di tlofela ba nthusitse ke qetile ke tshwere khathi ya ka mona mo ke leng teng.
Ke tlile mona na ko community hall to change black card ne le gold card so ne ntse sokodisa black card ane ke lontsha chelete so ke kopa hore lo tshaba le to change black card santane le kanako ka bane ntlokwalo ai kwala le tlo hloka di chelete tsa lona.
And so, Hugo, you can imagine that for them this was a seamless process. But the reality is, in Gauteng alone, about 432,000 people are, of course, using these SASSA Gold Cards and are part of the people that need to move onto the system. We've gotten confirmation from SASSA that so far in Gauteng, about 330,000 people have, of course, migrated to this new system. A few numbers still left over, but we will be able to get the national picture of just how many people are on the new system and how many more need to come on Monday when SASSA and Postbank officials will brief essentially residents on the processes so far, because there are still many questions. Apart from how many people are unaccounted for, what happens when that deadline of the 20th of March hits? What happens to those that, of course, haven't made the switch? And these are some of the questions that will be posed to officials on Monday when they host that media briefing, to really just take residents in confidence in regards to this process and make sure that we don't see that all infamous system glitches when it comes to the grant recipients and, of course, receiving payment. Hugo.
Veronica, we understand that biometrics are going to be implemented in this entire process. Now, in order to do that, you need a smart ID. Now, speaking to a social activist a little bit earlier, she said the challenge with that is that there's a cost of 150 Rand, which equates to half the grant that's got to be spent on this. Could this be a factor, do you think, in the reason that many of these individuals are not choosing to switch over to the new card?
Apart from not choosing to switch over, Hugo, you can understand that this is also part of the reason why we're seeing some of those servicing stations that are offering this process, seeing those long queues. Many that we've been speaking to that have walked through the doors of this hall have come with their usual green ID book. And so it tells you that perhaps maybe there seems to be a miscommunication from those on the ground, because ultimately the reason why we are seeing this migration is because we need safer processes. And the government has been speaking about for quite some time in improving systems across South Africa that include biometrics. And so we do continuously see those people still using the usual ID book, the green card. And these will be, of course, part of the questions that will be posed to government to say many have been able to make that switch, without the smart ID. We did see, in fact, some of the Postbank officials having that biometric system where people were able, in fact, to register their fingerprints on site. And so perhaps there are, plans and operations to mitigate those that don't have the smart ID. But it does, of course, speak to the bigger issue and the bigger picture to say, how much communication as well has been given to people on the ground in regards to these processes. As we spoke and we mentioned before, that mass communication in terms of mobilizing people still seems to be an issue. Many of the people, in fact, that we were speaking to say they opted to come to the community hall because many of them are still using outlets that, of course, offer the SASSA services. This includes your Pick and Pay, your Boxer, your ShopRite, and they are flooding those shopping centers instead of making use of activations like this. So communication still remains a massive issue in regards to these processes, Hugo.
Veronica Makhoali tracking that story for us as we continue to give you live updates around the transition from the SASSA Gold Cards to the new Postbank Black Cards.